Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I thought we would do something a little bit different in this video and look at Justin Baldoni's gene keys, so his hologenetic profile. Now, if you know and love human design, gene keys is an evolution of human design. Richard Rudd, who created the gene keys system, was actually a student of Ra Ruhu, who created the human design system. And it's still based off of the Chinese I Ching for that genetic coding potential and astrology. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds of really what gene keys is. If you're interested in learning more, I do have a link in the show notes. It is an affiliate link. I am a Gene Keys guide through the official Gene Keys website and schools. And you can go to the link in the show notes, learn a little bit more, even get your free hologenetic profile. And one thing I would say with gene keys, it's more contemplative than something like human design, which tends to be a lot more practical, tangible steps you can implement immediately. Gene keys does put you on the path of contemplation, which is looking at how the shadow of each sphere shows up in your life, how the gift may show up for you, and then the highest exalted state of energy, which would be the city of each sphere. So it is more contemplative. I would say as I've gone on this journey, when I first got into gene keys, I was very impatient. I'm like, all right, I just want to learn it all now and then know how to go from the shadow to the gift to the city to be like the monk on the hill and enlightened and in this exalted state. And I mean, it's just, that's always the ego talking. That's not the case. So it is a willingness to go on the journey of contemplation with gene keys. But I thought it'd be really interesting for you to just see how Justin Baldoni's gene keys play out in his hologenetic profile. And what I thought I would do is read a couple of the descriptors that is provided as part of the free profile, and then give just a short overview of his energy rather than breaking it down. So you're going to have multiple sequences, if you will, that you go through. So your genius is going to be one, and that's what your genius looks like. It's your incarnation cross in human design. Love will be the Venus sequence, and that is opening your heart and healing your core wounds. Prosperity is going to be your Pearl sequence. So it's how do you make embodied wealth and prosperity? Something Richard Rudd of Gene Keys used to always say, or does say, is wealth is heavy, prosperity flows. So it's this idea of when you are living your highest purpose and doing what you're meant to do, there's this prosperity that naturally flows through. Things seem to come easier than when you're trying to force and figure it out and overthink your way to success or wealth. And then his new system is the Starl Pearl. I'm just making up words as we go. The Star Pearl. And that's a new sequence that he's brought through. But the traditional three ones would be your genius, which is activation sequence, love, which is Venus, and Pearl, which is prosperity. I would say you want to go through the sequences in order. When I work with my clients in long-term support, so for example, in the shadows, we go through each sequence in order. And that's why it does take so long, because you're looking at, I'd say, at least a couple of weeks per sphere. And then you start over and you look back at everything and you go through it again through a higher exalted state, a more enlightened state, because those shadows don't just go away. They're being experienced in a new frequency, if you will. But I do offer Gene Keys readings. And for the Gene Keys readings, we do they're 60 minutes, but we do an overview of your hologenetic profile. It's not the deep dive that we do in the shadows, which is long-term support. But let's look at this. His life work is 41. And we can see here the shadow is fantasy. The gift is anticipation. And the city, which is that exalted state, is emanation. So what he's here to do, you are someone that by design should always be ahead of your time. And I do believe Justin is. A lot of the stuff that he's created through Man Enough absolutely has been ahead of his time. Deep inside, you have probably always had dreams of what you want to achieve in life, and you may have doubted whether you actually can. The trick is for you to follow the impulse behind those dreams without being attached to the form they take as they emerge into the world. Now, if you watched my video yesterday around finding happiness in the chaos. So I recommend watching that as well. It's on Justin Baldoni and his interview he had with Rainn Wilson on Soul Bloom. This is where I really believe he got off track. And he would probably likely agree with that as well. As he said, he was struggling to really separate this need to be liked and seen as a good actor and seen as a good director from his work. And I think where we really see that was the impulse to become attached to how he was seen in the world, to become attached to, the dream of Wayfarer Studios and the larger arc of his higher purpose. I think there was a little bit of an off-path moment where he really did become attached to the form they took as they went into the world. And what that can look like in terms of maybe a celebrity or an actor, director, is maybe their path really is, these documentaries which aren't seen by billions of people and aren't making billions of dollars at the box office, but that's the form that your higher purpose is meant to take in the world. That's the form that you're meant to actually live out. But then you get stuck in the shadow where you start to attach meaning to it, and that's not good enough. And then you start to make decisions from the mind. They may not end up looking like what your mind believes they should. So, right, the mind saying it should look like this. It should be a hit, box office hit, and that will make me be taken seriously by my peers, as an example. It should be a hit album, and then that will make me be taken seriously by my peers if we're talking about a singer, rather than his true life work, which is this dream of what he's going to achieve in life, how he's going to impact others, and letting it take the form that's meant to take. It says here, one of your greatest gifts is to anticipate the unexpected, and this knack will keep you one step ahead of everyone else around you. Above all, you need to be aware of your mind, because it will tend to grasp hold of belief systems that prevent you from acting. Or the other side of that, so that would be the repressed way of the expression of this shadow. So the repressed way is not taking action. Well, the reactive way of experiencing the shadow of his life work, Gene Key 41, is taking the wrong action. So, for example, hiring someone like Blake Lively so that he can have the hit movie and he can have like a bigger name actress attached to it, rather than really following soul, rather than trusting in the impulses that emerge within you and allowing them to become the actions. It says yours is no life of idle fantasy. If you have a dream, it's up to you alone to either keep it alive or allow it into the world. His evolution is Gene Keys 31. So what he's here to learn. And each sphere gives you more insight. This is just an overview. It's all very well having big dreams, but your evolution requires that you actually manifest those dreams or some aspect of them in reality. In this respect, you need to talk about and express the dreams that lie within you rather than keeping them locked away. You're here to have a far-reaching influence in the world and to find deep recognition for your talents and expression. This is something that I talked about in the video that I also uploaded today in regards to Blake Lively and her predictive astrology for the next year and predictive astrology with the lawsuit. And I say, we instinctively know, this is something Richard Rudd and Ra Ruhu, especially Ra Ruhu in Human Design, teach. We instinctively know on some level, right? So for example, if we're looking at Human Design, when we're looking at Justin Baldoni, he's a generator. We instinctively know we're meant to build something. We're meant to be productive. He instinctively knows that he's meant to fight for something that's worth fighting for, to bring people together and to care for people. You instinctively know that. But what happens is the mind gets involved and we start thinking and we start overthinking. And then we start to think of, how do I have this far-reaching influence in the world? And how do I get recognized for my talents and expressions? And so what his mind might come up with is, well, to be fully recognized for your talents and expressions, you need to make It Ends With Us into a hit film. You need to be a box office sensation, and then you'll be taken seriously as an actor. Then you'll be taken seriously as a director. And that little devil on your shoulder, if you will, is what pulls you off path. But the reality is you do not need internal dialogue. That's where we get off track, is our internal dialogue. You can know without thinking. In fact, it's the thinking that gets us in trouble. You can perceive with your feelings, and this goes for everyone, not just Justin Baldoni. We waste so much energy telling ourselves what we already know to be true, right? We already know what's true, but we try to convince ourselves, or we try to talk ourselves into it, even though we already know it to be true. Or we worry about what we don't know, and we start thinking about things that don't matter. And when the voice in our head finally stops talking, that's when we experience inner peace. But what we call thinking And that internal ruminating is just us making up stories. That's all. It's just us trying to control, telling you what you know, trying to make sense of everything you don't. But the problem is that voice, that internal voice that we hear, that we call internal thinking, makes you do so many things that ultimately have you going against yourself. Has you twisting yourself in knots rather than truly following soul. And what I hear so often from people is like, yeah, but this, yeah, but that. And I say, you have to surround yourself with and people. Stop with this but shit. You got to stop with it. If you find yourself, viewer, watching this and you're always like, yeah, but, that is why your life looks like how it does in whatever realm that you keep saying, yeah, but. So if it's your health and fitness, yeah, but I don't have time. Yeah, but this and that. That's why you're not achieving your goals. Surround yourself with and people. Okay, yeah, that didn't go as planned. And who are you through it? And how do you lead yourself now? So I think this beautifully is represented in what a lot of Justin Baldoni talks about is he realizes, and this is in the video again that I covered yesterday in regards to him with Rainn Wilson, that he was doing things trying to get recognized and then therefore was making decisions to get recognized. And then he realized that what he was trying to get recognized for wasn't what he wanted all along. But that's actually his evolution. That's actually what he's here to learn. Is the difference between the mind talking and telling you what you think you want, what you think you should go after, what you think you should have, versus how you actually are meant to be recognized in this world. So continuing with what it says here, how can you do this if you do not trust what's in your heart? If you let your heart do the talking, things will very quickly begin to go your way. But if you worry about the way you're expressing yourself or whether you're ready or not, you will miss your golden opportunity. Timing is very, very important to you, as Justin Baldoni. If you make yourself anxious by worrying about the future, you will quite possibly disrupt life's delicate natural rhythms. Everything comes in its own time. Just make sure you don't miss it when it comes. And this is one of the unfortunate things that so many of us get caught up within is we don't trust the timing of life. So we force and contort, or we see how someone else has been, we don't admit to ourselves that they've been working on it for 7 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years to get to where they are. We just decide we want it now. And if we don't get it in 30 days, especially in the era that we're in now, where everything has to be now immediate, if we don't get it within 30 days, well, forget it. It's not working for me. I see this with new entrepreneurs all the time that come to me for brand VIP days or help with their brand, or even spiritual awakening. It's like 30 days in or 6 months in, they're like, whatever. Like that's nothing. That's a blip in time, right? But we aren't patient. We don't actually trust in the timing of life. And it's not trusting in the timing of life that actually gets us off track. And I talk about that for Blake Lively as well in her astrology. Had she just trusted the timing of life, she actually would have got everything she wanted in terms of the reputation she wanted and the opportunities she wanted, but she didn't trust in the timing of life. His radiance, what keeps him healthy, Gene Key 28. One of the most important factors in your general health and longevity is your ability to laugh. I have a video on him, which is demonetized because the ink, I can't remember the ink now, commercial that he does. I think Jamie Heath's in it as well. It's hilarious, but they're doing kind of like a spoof song to Backstreet Boys. So anyway, it's demonetized, but it's a great little video. I had to put it up. There's so many videos where I see where he's making, like, he's funny. He's genuinely funny and he's making jokes. And that's what's going to keep him healthy. And let me just check up here. So just looking at his radiance. Yeah. And it's actually, I'll get to that in a moment. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So your ability to laugh, it's vital that your life affords you circumstances to really experience regular belly laughs. Your attitude towards life will also need to follow this lead. Life for you is about finding lightness and humor, especially in difficult or challenging circumstances. So I do believe for him, this opportunity here is, again, like, who are you within this? Who are you within these challenging times? It says you will also need to live a little dangerously from time to time. That does not mean stupidly, just that you allow your natural love of spontaneity to overrule your mind. Again, we have to get out of this habit of thinking. Thinking is the devil on your shoulder. Thinking is not your heart. Thinking is not your soul. And this goes out to everyone. Thinking is not your heart. Thinking is not your soul. Ra Hu in human design describes thinking as your outer authority for others. So you learn things and then you teach. Like right now, I'm being an outer authority, if you will, by teaching this. But it's not for making decisions. And the more you spend ruminating in your mind, the more off track you get. We think that if we ruminate more and we do more lists, that we have more control. Control is an illusion. It's a complete illusion. No matter how much thinking you do. His Radiance continues with, you need to directly experience the power of nature and the elements and not from an armchair. You need to get out in it, even sleep in it from time to time. He'd be a client that I'd be having outside a lot, like having a garden if he's somewhere that's not near a beach, but I think he's in Hawaii near a beach, having a garden, having some chickens, like getting outside, being in nature, getting in water daily. It would be critically important for him for grounding purposes. His purpose, what deeply fulfills me, Gene Keys 27. Ultimately, your life is not ever going to be about you. And this is the error he made, is it started to be about him. And I don't mean that as a slight, but it became about him being recognized as a good actor, him being recognized as a good director. No matter what you do, your true purpose is going to be reflected in the lives of those you affect. The only thing you need to learn is to give yourself the amount of nourishment you need so that you can concentrate the full power of your heart and energy on other people. If you give yourself too much or too little, you will feel a deep lack in your life. Your fulfillment knows no bounds when you find the people or family that you truly love. And this is again where he realized in that interview with Rainn Wilson, where he says, I realized what I thought I wanted wasn't what I wanted. I just want to be with my family. More than likely, your prime sense of purpose will be derived from your being a parent. And this is what he says in that interview with Rainn Wilson, all about being present as a father. Sense of purpose will be derived from your being a parent and seeing your children grow up strong and independent. If you do not have a biological family, you will need to live your life deep within the community in some form of ongoing service to others or to nature, which will fill your heart and make life truly worthwhile. And this is something I say to clients all the time, because whether I'm working with someone that's got no aspirations for having a big platform in life, or for those that have a big platform in life and maybe are starting to question what life is about, the deeper meaning of life, is sometimes we see descriptions of who we are like this, right? You're meant to affect others and have a big impact and change people's lives. And you're supposed to learn more about yourself through how you're reflected in others that you're around. And it can seem like, oh my gosh, I need to be like the next Tony Robbins, or I need to be the next Brad Pitt, or I need to be the next Britney Spears, or whatever. That's not the case. So what we learn about in Justin's chart, when we go all the way down to his purpose, which is in the hologenetic profile, we see purpose here. It's the spine. It's the base of the hologenetic profile. Everything rests on it. See, everything rests on that strong foundation. Well, what's his strong foundation? Well, what we learn in the end is that his sense of purpose is likely going to be derived from being a parent and being present with his children. It's not to say he can't also be a director and he can't also be an actor and he can't do all those other things. But I do believe he did get off track a little bit with It Ends With Us. Not necessarily the movie itself, but maybe the motivation behind it slightly. And I don't mean that as a slight towards him at all. We all get off track. That's part of being human. So we'll break down now an overview of his hologenetic profile. So if we're just looking at the overview of his profile, essentially what we're looking at is someone that was born into a life that was meant to be visible in some way without the embodiment piece. And this is what he talks about so beautifully and so frequently around man enough. What does it mean to be man enough? What does it mean to be present for those in your life? What does it mean to listen to others? The whole premise of Man Enough is based on the struggles that he personally has had. And we see that within his hologenetic profile, someone that was born meant to be visible in some way without the embodiment piece. So a man that would be seen, followed, and praised in many ways throughout his life before he had fully integrated who he truly was. And one of the things that we can really take to heart with Justin as well is he's a third line in human design. So the reality is, it's not that there's an end goal with the third line. He's constantly figuring it out through a life of trial and error. And that's not wrong. In fact, the fact that he brings us into that experience with him is what makes him so relatable. And in fact, have the impact that he's meant to have, because you can really see him, ourselves within him, our struggles within him. And that's why I believe that this case has really captured people's attention. Now, his soul blueprint kind of drags him through the trial by fire, especially when we look over at human design with that third line. There can be a lot of projection on him with the fifth line, especially as well in human design. And we see the lines here as well. So you're going to see 41.3. The second after the point is your line, what we would experience as a line in human design. So he's going to deal with a lot of those projections. If we look at it just from the genius lens, the activation sequence, we see 41.3, 31.3 is going to be his third line in human design for his profile. 28.5, 27.5 are the 5 lines. The second number you're going to see in his 3-5 profile over in human design. So that's the projections. People are going to project on you a lot. And there can be a lot of mental shame. So I have no doubt that he probably struggled with anxiety, maybe even struggled with depression. I don't know him that well and followed his story that much to know, but likely struggled with shame, guilt over how he was. But it's not, and he's not meant to have gone through these things to punish himself or to live in that shame. It's kind of like the rising of the phoenix, like that awakening that happens. Ra Ru used to say in human design, it's a sleeping phoenix, because the phoenix has to awaken. And then everything, the illusions burn down, and then you rise up. And that's very much his path, is, kind of asleep, if you will, going through the projections, going through the lack of embodiment, going through the trial and error experience to then awaken to there's something more here. I can be something more. I can experience life in a different way. I can be man enough. The awakening of that, the burning down of everything that doesn't fit, and then the rising up. And I don't doubt, as we're going to see here, that throughout his life, people probably in his shadow, especially if they met him when he was in his shadow, saw him as arrogant, maybe a little selfish. We're going to break that down. But overall, I would say for a lot of his hologenetic profile, it's confronting addiction. It can be addiction to identity, who he is. I would say even in this, from a very esoteric place, if he was a client of mine right now, I'd even look at the addiction to the identity of man enough. All honestly, for someone with Justin's past and spiritual, just resonance and knowledge, you could go that far with him. Not every client you could go that far with, but addictions, he's talked about addictions to corn in the past. But how has addiction shifted? And how has that addiction hurt you? So that addiction to identity is going to be big for him. That 10, so we see 10, we see 31. So see here, 10, shadow self-obsession. 31, arrogance. 27, selfishness. 10 again, self-obsession. So could you have maybe got back in the shadow? A little bit arrogant, maybe self-obsessed. I don't think he necessarily has, but we all have shadow aspects, and the shadow never goes away. So I would be looking at, can we loosen the addiction to the identity? Even loosen the addiction to the identity around a certain type of leader, certain type of feminist, etc. Who are you below all of that? Who is Justin Baldoni below all of that? If we leave all of the identities that have been created, all of the structures, all the concepts the mind has formed, if we leave all that aside, who are you? That's what I would be challenging Justin into in this phase of his life. That would really be, and transmuting 47 and 28, we see 47, 47, 28, 28, both come up twice. Transmuting the shame or self-judgment will be a big theme for him, but it's also within this phase of life. Again, what we have to realize, 47 is oppression, and that starts within ourselves. Transmutation, transfiguration is going to be the city. Even through this phase, there is likely some shame. I have no doubt that he feels some shame or guilt over how everything has gone. some self-judgment on himself on how he handled it. But if we can again loosen that addiction to identity and really look at being nakedly real with yourself, like nakedly real, really letting go of every construct you've created about who you are. Who are you? Because this path here on out with his hologenetic profile is it's like sitting with anything left that he's been trying to outrun, or anything left that he's been creating identities around or structures around that don't serve him. And can we shift into an embodied almost devotion to that higher path, which I believe he's been doing for quite some time, especially with his Baha'i faith, and lead not by claiming authority, but by becoming so natural, so surrendered that leadership emanates from you without effort, without having to hammer the identity over and over and over again. And I think that's where we see some people say, have some things to say about it being performative. And there's this ebb and flow, and I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to make it too long, but I do believe there's something to be said for loosening the identity just slightly, just slightly. Not a lot. It doesn't mean not standing for what you want to stand for anymore. But I think there's this contemplation of, who am I beneath even all of that? Beneath even the brand, beneath Man Enough, beneath the new identity I created to either outrun or transcend the old identity, because that's often what we do as well. Is, we don't like who we were, we feel shame or guilt over things we've done, so we create a new box, a new identity. We think with our mind, well, if I do this, then I can be that. But it's no different. It's a gilded cage. It's still an illusion. Now, when we're looking at the deeper realms of his hologenic profile, what we're really looking at is someone that is moving from a life of impatience, self-obsession, into beingness. So we see this in his Pearl 10. So the Pearl represents a great harvest in your life. So the Gene Keys brings you rewards and grace once you have let go of its underlying shadow pattern. The shadow of this Gene Key makes you tight, especially when you allow stress to lead you away from the beautiful and the simple. And you become tight when you succumb to the status quo and compromise a life that could be exquisite for a life of drudgery and monotony. This is, again, I think for him, for Blake, this was not written in the stars that she was going to go through this. For him, it was. He was meant to go through something that was really meant to challenge, are you succumbing to the status quo? Even within this identity that seems to be against the status quo, there's that nuance there. There's the polarity there, the paradox, if you will. When you bring your full awareness into these gifts, you'll experience a clarity that most people can only dream of. And that's his Pearl. Now, with self-obsession, it's a fixation of attention solely on one's own body and inner world, thus excluding consideration of others and one's impact on the environment. Now, this is an unhealthy mental obsession of seeking one's uniqueness and how to follow it into the world, expressed through addictions such as fashion and self-image, business achievement, or social popularity and influence. So this is something where, again, a lot of people might push back on this with Justin, but I imagine he'd be self-aware enough to be like, I probably did shift one addiction for another. And he talks about in that interview I have with Rainn Wilson, how he was struggling to separate being seen as a good actor and director and achievements with everything else, with who he is, with his acting, with his choices of what he was doing next. And it's also this unhealthy obsession with social popularity and influence. Is it really just strictly beingness if we're obsessed with and fixated on the influence our work will have? Is it actually born of heart and soul if we're fixated on the impact that it's going to have? And this is whenever I work with artists in any way, painters, sculptors, musicians, actors, this is always for those I find they a lot go through this period where it's like, am I actually doing it for the art, or am I doing it for public image, for popularity, for influence, for business achievement. And that can be a tough road to walk, especially in an industry like Hollywood. So I do think that It Ends With Us does show the shadow, and I know some people will be upset by that, but the shadow of his pearl. I do think there was, and he even says it himself, looking at how he could fit in. Now, the gift is naturalness. Naturalness is the effortless expression of one's true creativity and uniqueness beyond any definition, label, or external validation. So what did I say? Who are you below it all? That would be, if I ever had an opportunity to work with him, that'd be what I'd be working on with him. Who are you below it all? If we gently put man enough aside and everything you've created up until this point, who are you below it all? Naturalness is about relaxing in the playful innocence that is inherently available to all beings instead of fighting against the flow of life. And then the city is being. Being is the enlightened revelation that there is nothing to do, think, or say. In this context, the purpose of life is to be. The state of true being sees life as a great game and enjoys each moment with a sense of lightness and humor. Being is attained through deep relaxation into the present moment. And his pearl is through line 4. The secret to prosperity is the act of heartfelt charity. Reciprocity is the fundamental pattern that connects all things. Whether you know it or not, your greatest joy in this world will come from your loving service to others. 4th line is always going to be service to others. Your destiny for prosperity is to be a channel of abundance to those in need. Whether it is through time, energy, money, or simply your loving kindness, you're here to transform the lives of those in need by sharing selflessly. True generosity does not deplete your resources. So he has such an incredible chart. But this self-obsession, the arrogance, I imagine being in Hollywood, you're constantly fighting that shadow, impatience, right? Not waiting for the right time, but trying to cultivate it, trying to control it, trying to make it happen so that he's seen, so that he's accepted. Purposelessness is another big one for him. Being on purpose and being in his purpose is critically important for Justin. And that's also where you're going to see ill health show up, is when he's not on purpose. That immortality is going to come from being on purpose. And I genuinely believe that it's not just how Blake treated him, because when we look at it, even from a human design lens, what Ra Rahu says is, none of this, when you learn this, it's not a matter of all of a sudden everything in life going perfect. It's not a matter of all of a sudden you're always in this exalted state and everything's sunshine and rainbows and butterflies. But when we're on path, we're meeting the challenges and the obstacles in life that are meant for us. When we're on path, because we're meeting the challenges and obstacles in life that were always meant for us, that were kind of written in the stars, if you will, we have the resources, the internal strengths and traits and wisdom to overcome with little damage, if you will, to the body. But when we're off track and building a not self life, or for him, when he's making these decisions from self-obsession, which can be, doesn't just mean like, oh, I'm so obsessed with myself and my body. It's like that self-obsession is also because of social standing, because of business performance, because of movie performance, because of how he's seen by other people. That's also the self-obsession. That's the shadow. And it's no judgment towards him, because we all have our shadows. That's one of the things I love most about Gene Keys, is it really humbles us in many ways. So when he was making those decisions, he's building a not self life. And then what ends up happening is when you start to make decisions from the shadows, you start to encounter things that were never yours to encounter in the first place. You start to encounter challenges that were never yours to encounter. And so then when we start to encounter challenges that were never for us to encounter, we don't necessarily have the inherent strengths, wisdom, gifts, and know-how to get through it with little damage to the body. So we see more detriment to the body when we're meeting these obstacles from a place of lack of embodiment, when we're meeting obstacles from a place of the shadow. And I think that's one of the pieces that happened for him, was he got so sick because he got into some of these situations from the shadow, and then met situations that I really don't think, I do think in some ways there was a lesson that was meant to be had for him. So I want to make sure I'm clear on this, because I said, maybe it was fated. I do think there was a lesson for him in terms of his spiritual awakening and self-development that was meant to be had. I definitely do not see, in terms of Blake's astrology, that she was meant, and fated to have this situation happen. She wasn't. And I would say, based on how things went with his health, I don't think this situation was meant itself, like this lawsuit and the taking over his movie, etc., with Blake was fated. I do believe, though, that there was meant to be something that was meant to trigger more spiritual evolution. What could that have been? So let's say from the get-go, he still picked It Ends With Us because he thought, you know what? It's a good story. It's a story with a message, but it's also got box office potential. See? So there's the but. There's that self-obsession. It's also got, and that arrogance and that impatience. Right? So it's still got that energy of, but it's got box office potential. And maybe with this movie I'll be taken seriously as a director and I'll be taken seriously by my peers. That undercurrent of the shadow could have got him into the movie, and maybe like alternate universe. I mean, quantum physics does say there are thousands and infinite versions of us happening at any one moment in time. Yes, that is true. That's actual quantum physics. So maybe in one of these alternate universes, he still got into it for the wrong reasons. He still got into it for the shadow, from self-obsession. But he stayed true in many respects. So he didn't go after the bigger names such as Blake. He didn't get her involved in the project. He picked the movie itself because it had box office potential, but stayed true to more like keeping it more like indie, or keeping it more little known actors, and staying true to his vision. There likely still would have been a lesson for him this year around it. Maybe the movie did great and it's a box office hit. And then he notices he's being seen by his peers, and he notices he's getting a seat at the table. But then when he's at the table and he's talking to his peers, he's like, I don't know if I actually want to be accepted by you guys. I don't know if I actually want to be a part of this world. And that was the lesson. But he still got the movie. It was a hit. There was no one trying to take over the movie. There was no lawsuits on the other side. There was no false SH claims, right? Do you see where I'm going with this? There was still a lesson to be had. But when he follows, even if he made that self-obsession decision to take it on in the first place, if overall he's staying true to being of service to others and bringing an important message forward and staying true to his vision and his creativity, the lesson wasn't the same. And I don't believe the lesson was meant to be the same for either of them. I don't think Blake was meant to have this lesson. I don't think Justin was meant to go through this either. And how I can confidently say that is because the detriment to his health. That's how I can confidently say that. So Justin, in terms of his evolution, it is this beingness. And that's the number one thing I'd be working on him. The first thing I'd be working on. I think he's overall gotten to a place of a lost selflessness. It's just still working on that path. We all have those shadows. I would love to work with him on his gene keys. I think he's so spiritually attuned. It would be fantastic to work with him on it. Forgiveness for himself and others. Go and beingness. Really coming into this place of beingness. His life work as well. The emanation. Emanation is the recognition that all life emerges from an unnameable, inconceivable, limitless light of creation. It's a revelation of the fundamental patterns connecting all thought, experience, and sensations into a unified field of awareness. Emanation occurs as one returns to the emptiness before thought. So that's what ultimately gets us, is the thought, is the thinking, the trying to figure it out. What should I do? What do I need to do? What do I have to do to get to where I want to go, or where I think, where I perceive I want to go? Life work, line 3, as a changer archetype, you're invited to be true to your colorful, unpredictable, and versatile style. Your life may call you to a diverse array of relationships, creative interests, careers, or locations. Your greatest strength lies in your capacity to adapt, to learn, to grow. And as life work, you're someone that by design should always be ahead of your time. We talked about this. Deep inside, you've always had dreams of what you want to achieve in your life, and you may have doubted whether you actually can. And that doubt within his life work is what can be the driver into, ultimately, that self-obsession. That doubt. Can I do it? Well, can I be accepted? Will I have the business opportunities, etc.? So Justin's path is really coming to a place, I would say, of beingness overall. Timelessness, humility. Like, even energetic expressions above leadership. Like it's just humility. It's just being. His entire chart, just being, emanating leadership, emanating creativity, emanating love, emanating service, emanating forgiveness. But that would be the work I would do with him ultimately is who are you below it all? And start, that's where we would start, is exploring that. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, if you want to book your own Gene Keys hologenetic profile overview, you can book it at the link in the show notes. If you are someone that's really enjoying different aspects of deconditioning and you love the astrology, you love the human design, the positive psychology, the Gene Keys, the shadows is where it's at, is the long-term deconditioning process where we bring in all these tools. We bring in positive psychology, Gene Keys, human design, astrology, and really set you on that path. Just like I would say with Justin, if he was to sign up for the shadows tomorrow, what we're working on in this space is who are you below it all? How can we get you into beingness, the humility and the timelessness of simply you being you, one with the whole. If that's of interest, you can check out that link in the bio in the show notes as well. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.